Rev up your engines! Now, myths are propagated throughout society for various reasons. Often they have a tiny bit of basis in truth, like this first one. Don't talk on your cell phone while you're filling your car with gas at the gas station, because it might cause an explosion. Well, that's fake. Now, in the old days, with old cell phones that had external antennas, theoretically they could have a spark in the antenna that could ignite gasoline vapors. Well, modern phones are different. They have internal antennas. There's no antenna sticking out of this phone. Even with these, I've never even heard of one causing an explosion, but hey, nobody has phones like this anymore. These phones have internal antennas. They don't make any spark. So when you're filling the car with gas, yak away if you want on your modern cell phone. Just remember to turn the engine off, because the engine running creates all kinds of sparks and you don't want the fumes to go. So always shut your car off before you put the gas pump inside and fill it up. And of course, don't smoke or vape. Those vape machines put out really high temperatures while you're filling it up. Fill it up. You want to talk on your phone? Go ahead. And don't start vaping up a storm while you're doing it. Now, the second myth is another common one. People say, hey, fill your car up with gasoline first thing in the morning when it's cold and the gasoline is more dense. Then in the afternoon, if it warms up, it'll expand and you'll have more gasoline. Well, there's a lot of reasons this isn't true. Most gas pumps, the tanks are underground. It's relatively insulated. The temperature doesn't change that much from the morning to the afternoon. But the main reason is, even if the gasoline expands and contracts a little bit, whatever you pump in your car has a certain amount of energy called British thermal units. And it doesn't matter what size it is inside your tank. If you pump it and fill it up, you're going to have the same amount of British thermal units whether that gasoline expands or contracts inside your tank. The energy is in there just like a battery, and it doesn't matter what size it is, it still has the same amount of British thermal units inside. That's the law of physics, and that's not going to change. So don't get up early in the morning to fill your car with gas thinking you're going to save anything. Now, the third myth that you got to change your engine oil and filter every 3,000 miles is actually one that was originally based in reality. Take when I was a young mechanic. My father had a 1954 Ford Fairlane V8. You change the oil every 3,000 miles. And the reason you did that was, one, it didn't even have an oil filter. That was an option. So there was no oil filter to filter the crud. And back in those days, the oil wasn't as well made as it is today. And neither were the metals in the engine. Things just wore out faster. So you wanted to change your oil every 3,000 miles to keep sludge from building up, to keep wear from happening. But modern oils and engines are better made than they used to be. Now, I still change the oil in my cars every 3,000 miles and often less than that. But that's for a different reason. I don't drive all that much. Oil will break down over time. So, regardless of how many miles you drive a year, you want to change your oil once a year at least. If you have a normal car and you're using normal oil, not synthetic oil, I'm more of a believer of changing it every 5,000 miles, 6,000 miles or so. And if you use full synthetic oil, you can push it to 7,000 or 10,000 miles, especially if you do a lot of highway driving, because highway driving doesn't wear the oil. I had a customer the other day, I changed the oil for them. They drove out to California and back, and then they said, Scotty, we checked the oil and it was whistle clean. I said, well, yeah, if you drive like 4,000 miles on a highway, 60, 70, 80 miles an hour, that's equivalent to 10% city. So 4,000 miles is more like 400. Then you can push it even further to change it. But even the synthetic oils are only good for 1 year in your vehicle. So regardless of the mileage that you drive, you want to change your oil once a year. But the 3,000 mile, that is a myth from the past. It was once true, but it isn't anymore. Now, number 4, a new modern myth, one propagated by engineers and manufacturers, is that you get a modern car with one of those sealed automatic transmissions with no dipstick, that it has a lifetime fluid. You never have to change the fluid in the automatic transmission. Well, as far as this mechanic is concerned, that's a myth propagated by the manufacturers and the engineers. I asked an engineer once, I said, what do you mean by this is a lifetime fluid? And they just said, well, Scotty, that means that the fluid is good for the lifetime of the transmission. You never need to change the fluid. It'll last as long as the transmission does. But how long is the transmission gonna last? I asked the engineer, he says, well, our warranty is for 60,000 miles. And I'm like, if I had a transmission that went out 60,000 miles, I'd come back and strangle you. My Celica's got over 230,000 miles on the original transmission. Still shifts like a dream. They're just telling you that, well, kind of planned obsolescence here. You want to Not change your transmission fluid? Oh, you don't need to. It's great fluid. But if your transmission goes out when it's got 100,000 miles or more on it, they're not going to fix it for free. They're going to say, well, that was the lifetime of the transmission. Time to buy another one. No, I don't mind buying a cheap microwave oven. I don't mind buying a cheap watch for $29. But I sure as heck don't want to have to put in a $5,000 or $6,000 automatic transmission because it decided to go out because the fluid got dirty and things wore out. Now, yes, the fluid in modern transmissions is much better than it used to be. When I was a young mechanic, you changed the fluid and filter in a transmission every 30,000 miles. But today, most of them use full synthetic fluids, and yes, they can last longer, but they're still going to get dirty. Things are still going to wear out over time. That's just how machines are. There's friction. Bits of metal are going to wear out. Things are going to get dirty inside. Then the seals can start leaking. And something as dumb as the little front main seal of your automatic transmission that might cost $20 might cost you $1,000 or more to take the engine and transmission apart to change that seal. So, you still want to change that fluid. The lifetime myth of you never need to change it is a bunch of planned obsolescence myth-making by the engineers and manufacturers. Yes, the fluid lasts a lot longer, but me, I still change the stuff every 60,000 miles or 80,000 miles because it's not that hard to do in most cases. You just drain and fill. You don't flush, so you're getting a certain percentage out and you keep taking little bits out and putting the same exact fluid back in. Voila. But don't just leave it and think it's going to last forever, because here's a lesson from the past that told you how wrong they can be. Back in my grandfather's day, he was a mechanic. They originally used alcohol mixed with water to keep the water from freezing in the winter in your radiator. Of course, then when it got hotter outside, the alcohol would have just evaporate, and that'd be the end of it. So they came out with what they called permanent antifreeze. So everybody figured it's permanent. They left it in. Well, all the anti-rust capabilities of it wore down after so many years, and then it ended up destroying a whole bunch of engines because it wasn't permanent. But they said it was at the time. Now, the fifth myth is that using your car's air conditioning system is going to radically lower your gas mileage, so you shouldn't use it if you want to get better gas mileage. Again, it's a myth based in reality from the past. When I was a young mechanic, take the GMs, they had these gigantic compressors. They had like 3-4 pounds of refrigerant inside them. They took a reasonable drag, and you could lose a few miles per gallon when you ran them. But modern ones, hey, and I'm modern, I mean anything in the last 30 years. Modern ones hardly use that much energy at all. Matter of fact, I had a customer, he drove from Houston to the Indianapolis 500 and back. And on the way, he ran the air conditioner. Saw what his gas mileage was. On the way back, he turned the air conditioner off and rolled the windows down, and found that he got the same gas mileage whether he had the air conditioning on or whether he had the air conditioning off with the windows rolled down. Now, of course, at highway speeds, rolling your window down is going to make the air more turbulent, and the vehicle won't be as efficient driving through the atmosphere. So it's going to have a little bit more drag. Well, that tiny bit of drag of rolling the windows down was exactly the same as the tiny amount of drag that the air conditioner in his Mustang took. So it really isn't true anymore. Don't think you're going to get great gas mileage if you turn your air conditioner off. It doesn't make hardly any difference at all. But if you have a car, anything made in the last 25 years, you turn on your air conditioner, you do get a lot worse gas mileage. You got a problem with the air conditioning system or the electronic system. If an air conditioner is starting to wear out, it can really put a strain on the engine. I've had customers where the car ran fine. If you turned the air conditioner on, every time it came to a stop, it would stall out. It was because the compressor was dragging too much power. Then you know you'd have a problem and have it looked at. But normally, it isn't going to make hardly any difference at all in your gas mileage running the air conditioner. Now, the sixth myth, one way to check your battery is if you get in your car and you crank your engine over and your engine goes rung, 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 but it won't start, that means the battery's okay and something else is wrong. In the past, that was pretty much true. We have a car in the old days, if the battery wouldn't crank it over, we jump started, start right up, we'd know, well, the battery's gone or it's drained, something's wrong with the battery. But today's cars are much more complex. You can have a battery hiding in here that has plenty enough power to crank the engine over, but won't actually start the car, because modern cars have so many computer systems to them. I see this quite a bit, especially in the winter. They have enough power to crank the engine over, but there's not enough extra power to run the ignition system, the fuel injection system, the anti-theft system, and if anything goes wrong in either of those three systems, car's not going to start even though it's cranking over. I've had numerous late model cars towed over here and the customer says, well, I know it's not the battery because it cranks over, it just won't start. So I get out my trusty little battery checking machine, positive to positive, negative to negative, then turn it on, push the button, now it's checking it. Doesn't take that long. It says recharge battery, which isn't surprising because I don't drive this car all that much anymore. But it knew that the battery was good and just needed recharging. If it would have said replace battery because it had a bad cell or something, these machines can check that really fast. And I have had quite a few batteries in the last 10 years. Customer towed the car in thinking, well, it's cranking, headlights come on, battery's okay. Battery did not have enough electricity to run on the computer system. All I did was put in a new battery and whoop, up they started and away they drove. So if you don't want to be fooled by a battery that cranks your car but won't start it, once every year or so, just have your battery checked with one of these machines. Buy one if you want, they're not all that expensive anymore, and then you can test any car you own. They work on all cars. Then you'll know, hey, the battery's starting to go. If it's 100%, it's fine. But if it starts getting to 30, 40%, then it's a good idea to buy another battery before it strands you somewhere. They last for years, so bite the bullet when it's weak and don't get stuck somewhere. Now the seventh and last myth I'm going to dispel is your car's engine's wearing, you want to put a heavier oil. Maybe it says to use a 0W20 and you're going to put a 20W40 or something in it because it's a thicker oil and you think it's better for your engine because it's worn. Well, this is another myth that was based in reality in the past. Yeah, when I was a young mechanic, cars generally had bigger engines. A lot of them had V8s here in the United States with pushrod engines. And as they wore, you could put a little heavier oil in to compensate for the wear in the piston rings and everything so that it would run smoother and make less noise. And really, the pinnacle of this was STP oil treatment, that super thick oil that made it thicker, which was okay in those old engines. But in modern engines, no. Modern engines have variable valve timing and many other complex devices that require a thinner oil to work correctly. You throw an oil that's too heavy, it's going to wear those systems out because they don't get correct lubrication on startup. Realize that when you start your car, about 90% of the metal wear in your engine occurs on a dry startup. When the car's been sitting a while and you start it up, it's got to pump oil to the top. Cams, variable valve timing, all that stuff's on the top. If the oil's too thick, it takes too long to get there and has bare metal for a little while. It will wear your engine out even faster. It won't help you, it'll actually hurt your engine. They're gonna say, oh, Scotty, you're a hypocrite. You're silica there. It says to use 10W30. And you use 20W40. It's got 230,000 miles and it's just a plain old engine. There's no variable valve timing. It's got cams on the top, but they're not variable. It's a much simpler design and you can put a little bit heavier oil in them as they age. But don't do that in any modern car that has variable valve timing, GDI fuel injection. Those have to have oil that flows correctly, and the thinner the oil, of course, the better it flows. And especially for you guys and gals that live up north, pure synthetic oil, the lighter it is, it really flows good at low temperatures. And if you put in like a 2040 in an engine there that's so thick, you're certainly going to wear it out faster, especially in the winter when it's really cold. Stick to the oil that it says on an oil cap. A lot of cars now are like 0W20 oil. Real light oil. So now you know 7 car myths that you should stay away from. And since it's mechanic money, I'm giving away one of these Auto battery checkers. To have a chance to win, place a clean, non-offensive comment on the YouTube comments below, and the computer will randomly choose the winner who can now check their car batteries all by themselves. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.